And you're saying that Boris Yeltsin is basically he's a bogus military official. He doesn't know squat about the military.
He doesn't have any military education, training, and he doesn't have any idea about how to command military.
What about his drinking problem? Is he really just a drunk?
You gave a very good point. He doesn't have any idea how to communicate with his military subordinates, exclude only drinking with them.
He only likes to drink with them, huh?
Why not?
That Russian vodka, huh?
Because military usually are very strong for drinking.
Yeah, they like to drink.
And it's a very good campaign for president.
Yeah, it's good for him, huh? Let's go. Oh, boy.
Isn't that
make you nervous?
There's so much there, I'll tell you, in that interview. And think about, again, Yeltsin was president. Now, of course, look how far we come down the road with a guy that actually has KGB training. That would be Putin, a guy that really knows what he's doing. Very interesting. Tonight, Gordon Chang with us, with all that's going on with China and so much. And of course, Nick Holscher, we're going to endeavor to get Nick on the program. As the WHO says, we may not have gotten ahead of the Ebola. Really, how convenient, Logan? How convenient. A polycrisis. Remember the World Economic Forum talking about a polycrisis? Multiple crises at one time? Well, again, not interested in making you scared, but certainly having you be prepared and understanding false flags or deliberate releases. We'll cover all that tonight. Don't go away. Come back tonight. Take care.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan, and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
President Trump is signing an executive order to restrict gender transitions for minors. The order seeks to end federal support for medical procedures aimed at altering sex or gender, which includes surgery for the use of puberty blockers or sex hormones. This action impacts minors, anyone under the age of 19 years old. This order calls for the Secretary of Health and Human Services to, quote, take all appropriate actions to end the use of gender-affirming care for young people. 26 states, including Indiana, have passed bans on gender-affirming health care.
Folks, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday, and we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast world. Today, we're exposing it again. We're a jaw-dropping scandal straight out of the Biden-era military. An Air Force doc, Lieutenant Colonel Josh Smalley, appeared to reassure military medical officers and civilian employees that they couldn't be sued for performing sex change procedures on minors. According to an explosive Daily Caller exclusive, Smalley, who once ran the Air Force's Transgender Medical Health Unit, shared multiple sets of documents in 2023 telling doctors things like, don't worry about the lawsuits. The Department of Defense has your back when it comes to, quote, gender-affirming care, unquote, on children. Taxpayer-funded mutilation of minors, protected from legal accountability. This is the radical gender ideology that was rammed into our armed forces under Joe Biden. They prioritize politics over science, over readiness, and the well-being of our kids. But it didn't stay hidden. The Center to Advance Security in America, led by our guest today, fought through the FOIA request and a lawsuit to drag these documents into the light. And joining me right now is James Fitzpatrick. He's an Army veteran, former Trump 45 administration appointee, and the director of CASA, and the man who helped break this story. James, thanks for being here. Walk us through exactly what your team uncovered and why Smalley should be fired immediately if he's still hired from his taxpayer-funded position.
Sure thing, Colonel. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you. So yeah, I can break it down for you a little bit in terms of what we uncovered. This actually dates back to 2023. Our team at CASA filed a FOIA asking for the various communications related to what we reference as the creation, direction, and implementation of what you referenced in your lead up, the Transgender Health Medical Evaluation Unit in the Air Force, otherwise known as THEMU. Lieutenant Colonel Smalley was one of the custodians that we referenced in the FOIA, given that he ran the unit. And as you also said, he's actually now a taxpayer-funded professor at what's called the Uniformed Services University. And I just want to take a minute to sort of step back and give you a picture as to who he is. He's a trained pediatrician, I think, which gives us a little bit of an in to see what the Biden administration was really up to here in bringing on a pediatrician to run this unit. He ran THEMU. He's at the USU now, and actually his profile since this story has been taken down. He's also written various papers on transgenderism and in the military, things like navigating transgender healthcare in the uniformed services and transgender and gender diverse healthcare in the U.S. military, what dermatologists need to know. So this is a guy who is extremely well versed in this area and someone who seemingly was brought on specifically to run this unit and had this special training as a pediatrician. So that's just a little bit of background on him. In mid-2024, once we realized that the Biden administration was not complying with our FOIA request, we filed suit. So we sued them in mid-24, and we're just starting to get the records back now. And what this article uncovered, we believe, is really just the beginning. There are several concerning emails that we came across. Now, some of them have been heavily redacted, but that's okay. We're sort of in the process of fighting back against some of that in the courts. But there's plenty enough to see the start of something concerning here. We had one email from Smalley sent out to the field entitled "IP Care for Transgender Children in Europe." IP means inpatient. So this was something that they were looking at. From what we could gauge from the emails, they were seemingly analyzing this sort of care in Europe to use in our military. But the one that I think that the thrust of the article discusses is when he sends an email out to the field, and in the subject line he says questions from the field on minor gender affirming care, and then attached to that email he has a memo, which is entitled "Additional Protections for DoD Personnel Against Personal Liability for Performing Official Duties." So I think what we can gauge here is that he was getting questions in from some of his doctors in the field who may have been nervous about performing these, providing this care, and he is reassuring them, that if it is part of their official duty, that they cannot be held personally liable. I think it's extremely concerning. I think, our litigation is going to uncover, I hope it uncovers even more documents related to this. It seems that it will, given what we've seen so far. But it is just, as you said, the lengths that the Biden administration went to push this on our military and their dependents, including minor children, is really staggering.
Yeah. So let me just make sure I understood you correctly, James. The Smalley guy, is he still an Air Force doctor?
He's a trained Air Force doctor. We believe his current assignment is that he is at what's called the Uniformed Services University acting as a professor. It is unclear to us whether he also is on active duty or not. We're trying to learn that information as we speak. And as I said, when our story broke, his profile dropped from the university's website. So we don't know really as of today whether he's been fired or not. Our organization's trying to do more research on that. So it is unclear.
Yeah. So Uniformed Services University, is that controlled by the Department of War or Health and Human Services?
Our understanding is that it's controlled by a sort of a combination. It trains military and other sorts of government doctors, all federally funded at that university.
Wow. That's very interesting, considering all the military units are reporting they've eliminated DEI completely, followed the president's orders. And here we have potentially a pediatrician that pushed this.
That's right. And, you know, it would be seemingly running afoul of the president's executive order, eliminating this sort of ideology in the military. But I don't discredit the secretary or the president here. I think what it shows you is just how large this effort was during the Biden administration and how difficult it is to rip it out in its entirety. It's everywhere, right? I mean, it was in every branch. It was down to the lowest level. I can tell you from my own experiences as a reservist, I mean, we would spend hours upon hours doing DEI training. So, it's all sort of connected. And it seems like, I know you're an Air Force veteran, but unfortunately, it seems like the Air Force was really where they focused a lot of their ire. At least maybe that was start of their experimenting, and then they would go from there with their DEI madness.
Well, that was my next question. Have you looked at all of the services from this perspective, and the Air Force stood out, or is it across the board?
It's ongoing research. Yeah. It's ongoing research that we've found it to have infected throughout the military, but we do throughout the past 3 years of our organization looking into this, we have found some egregious examples in the Air Force, separate from the trans issue. And another issue we found in the Air Force back with CQ Brown was in charge was they were purposefully trying to limit the amount of whites that went into the Air Force ROTC program. And we had emails and PowerPoint presentations where they spelled that out. They were trying to increase minorities and decrease whites, right? So that was just another example of something that they had racial quotas throughout the Air Force that Brown was trying to implement. So just everywhere in every way, and we just thought that this was one of the more egregious examples.
Oh, yeah, it is. Especially what makes it egregious is if he's still working in any way where he could have negative influences on our kids.
That's right.
Yep. I mean, that's and I wasn't disparaging Secretary Hegseth. I was just getting at the bureaucracy of the Pentagon. And when I say the Pentagon, I mean the global bureaucracy of the Department of War and potentially HHS combined, which I think is the next biggest one. It's just very difficult to find and root the ideas and the people that push them out, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, it's such a massive bureaucracy and organization that, again, the prior administration pushed to every level in every way, spending millions of dollars in terms of both real resources and time. The times of soldiers, wasted in training, those preparing those trainings, everything like that. So it was really a resource suck on all branches of the military. And just a little bit more on Smalley that we uncovered. He also sort of ran a sort of like a traveling roadshow where we saw he was providing. We have one example where he was at Buckley Space Force Base in Colorado, where he was giving 8 hours of training. That's a full working day, right? And he's giving an 8-hour training on enhancing the cultural awareness of transgender service members and support unit cohesion. And he's talking about use of pronouns, use of restrooms, how to transition in the military, right? So not only is he, talking about this, from an actual medical provider perspective, but then he's going out and training rank and file soldiers in this as well.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see the course critiques from that training event. The Air Force requires those. So there may be a potential FOIA opportunities there. So you had to sue the Air Force in addition to submit the FOIA just to get this information?
That's right. Yeah, and it's been a multi-year process. We filed suit in about roughly a little less than a year after we filed the original FOIA, and now we're just starting to get documents back. So this is, I think the whole FOIA process it takes a while. You have to be patient, but we found a particularly we have a good niche organization does at this. We've had various success stories of exposing records over the years, especially as it relates to the woke military agenda of the Biden administration. So, but yeah, it does take quite a while.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it does, and I think I really think that the folks involved in this stuff seriously believe that they're not going to be held accountable in any way whatsoever. And when we come back from this break, I want to talk a little bit about that and more about what the organization that you direct is doing, because it's very, very important to the American people. We'll be right back with James Fitzpatrick.
Friends, this is Brandon House. For more than a year now, I've been teaching through the book of Revelation, and the response from you has been overwhelming. You've asked me again and again, when are you going to put this study in print? We want to mark it up. We want to share it with our families. Well, it's here. My brand new 2-volume commentary on the book of Revelation, verse by verse, chapter by chapter. This is not a watered down, allegorized replacement theology approach to Revelation. This is a literal, grammatical, historical study, the way the Lord intended his word to be read. And I connect the prophecy of Revelation to the headlines you're watching unfold right now, the rise of global government and the convergence of end-time events the Lord Jesus warned us about. Folks, we are living in serious days, and there has never been a more important time to understand what God has told us about what is coming. Get your 2-volume Revelation commentary today at worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com.
This morning, I signed a declaration. Sex-rejecting procedures are neither safe nor effective treatment for children with gender dysphoria.
I'm here at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his deputies have just announced a series of actions to block access to gender-affirming care for transgender children. These affect children who have gender dysphoria or a distress over their gender identity that doesn't match their assigned sex. The Trump administration's rules are not final yet, but if enacted, they will mark some of the most significant actions that the Trump administration has taken to restrict gender-affirming care for minors. They also build on a larger effort by the Trump administration to target the rights of transgender Americans. The proposals include cutting off Medicare and Medicaid funding for hospitals that provide gender-affirming care to children. This can include things like puberty blockers, hormones, or surgical interventions. Another proposed rule aims to bar Medicaid funding from being used for this kind of care. The Health Department's Office of Civil Rights is also moving to bar gender dysphoria from being defined as a disability.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking about transgender medical operations, surgeries, medical care is what they call it. It's really injecting them with chemicals that chemically castrate them, essentially, or make them unable to have children if they're females. And quite frankly, it's disgusting. And my guest today is James Fitzpatrick. He's an Army veteran. He's a director of the Center to Advance Security in America, CASA. James, you were an Army Judge Advocate General, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was actually deployed with the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. I was over in Kuwait and Jordan in 2018, and I still serve in the reserves.
Well, thank you for your service. We appreciate you, man.
Yeah, of course.
Did you see anything in these documents expressing concern about the negative effects on these children of the surgeries and the chemical castrations and those kinds of things?
Not yet. But like I said, I think we're early on, specifically with this lawsuit and this production. I hope to. Hopefully that I hope there are some that we're sort of concerned with that and we're pushing back on it. But we have not yet. Part of the reason for that is that there there was heavy redactions in a lot of these emails, and I think we're having ongoing litigation. Our attorneys do with the Air Force on this, so we're trying to get as much information out of this as possible. Sometimes with these more controversial productions, you'll see that regardless of the administration, because a lot of this is done by career staff. You'll see that in terms of trying to limit what they can get out in the beginning in a production, and then as the litigation rolls on, you get more and more information.
Yeah, I guess the reason I asked the question, one of the reasons you just brought up, civil servants, supposedly civil servants, they're really bureaucratic tyrants that are being paid with our tax dollars. Yeah. Is the way I think about them nowadays, having learned a lot the last 10 years about the people, large swaths of them running the bureaucracy at every level of government in this country. They are not serving me or my family. They're serving their own power, quite frankly. But it's one thing. I don't know how. I want to get y'all's perspective on this. It's one thing to try to protect information, to preserve, say, a government official's power or a government entity's power. It's another thing to redact this stuff, to prevent the knowledge of folks like parents of these children from knowing exactly what was being said about these procedures. I don't even like calling them medical care. I don't know why we let people get away with that.
No, that's a fair point. I mean, we don't know whether from our emails, we don't know whether the parents were complicit with this or not. But they likely were, because the way that the children would be gaining access to this care would be through their active duty service member parents, right? So we don't know, and maybe the production will tell us more on that. We just don't have enough information to make to assess that yet. But I think you're right that when you get back to these sort of deep state bureaucrats, in that they think that they're in charge when they are not. They serve the president. They serve the administration. They should be implementing the policy priorities of the administration and not their own agendas. They should not be trying to wield power within their own fiefdoms. Their job is to serve the American people through the president who was elected by the people. And I think that I got to give the credit to the administration for rooting out a lot of these deep state actors right at the beginning, and all of the allies of the administration in terms of finding and presenting people who are cutting against and trying to be part of that resistance, and getting rid of them, because there's just no tolerance for that. That's not what you are there for. You're not there to talk about or implement your own personal agenda, whatever that may be. You are there to serve the president and the cabinet member for which you work, who are there serving the American people.
Yeah. Lawful orders are lawful orders.
That's right.
And that's another thing. A question I had in my mind, not being privy to the documents you've gotten so far, was there any discussion of these in this information, these documents, of the lawfulness of this? I mean, I don't remember Congress passing any laws authorizing minor transgender surgeries and chemical castration, for instance, of military dependents. I mean, I was a military dependent. I couldn't even get braces because it wasn't an authorized procedure.
Right. Look, I think we see that a little bit in what I've referenced in terms of there must have been the only logical conclusion to an email being sent out that says that references questions from the field on minor gender affirming care, and providing an attachment reassuring people that they do not hold personal liability for providing that care. The only logical conclusion you can make from that is he was receiving questions about that from the field, whether they be legal or medical. So, yes, I'm hopeful that once we get past some of these redactions and we get additional productions, whatever's there is there. But I'm hopeful. I think that there is likely more of this out there. And we're going to fight as hard as we can, both in court, in the media, and however we can to shed light on this.
Yeah. This is kind of old. We were talking, what, 22, 23, 24, or my 1 year or two?
That's right. Yeah. These were emails that were being sent in 2023.
Okay. 2023.
Yep.
So 3 years ago, we're 1 year into the current administration that has eliminated all of this stuff. Any guesses yet, based on what you're seeing, on what's still out there that's still actively undermining our kids, especially?
Well, I don't have enough information yet to necessarily break it on your show, but I hope to maybe in the future. But I do think there are going to be some other names of some other doctors and some other actors within both the Air Force and other branches that we're doing our homework on. But that once we have everything, all the research done and ready to put out, I do think you're going to see some other names and potentially a fair amount of other names that were involved in sort of this effort on the transgender, especially as it relates to providing gender affirming care. So we do think the research is pointing us in that direction.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because it's the same time frame that the COVID-19 vaccine was being pushed so aggressively inside the armed forces. And quite frankly, I think the medical community and the officer corps has completely discredited itself the way, and the legal community, by the way,
right.
completely discredited itself. I don't know how long that discrediting will be, in our faces, but and from the medical perspective, saying the vaccines were safe, even though we had all of these adverse reactions, and even manipulating the database, the DMEDS database, to make it show that the reactions weren't as strong as they were adversely and everything. Is there a suspicion of any evidence of that kind of thing, manipulation of data to sway them in a positive way towards doing transgender care versus not doing it on kids?
Not necessarily yet. I think, we've seen some members of Congress. I know Senator Ron Johnson has been doing phenomenal work on this, just exposing, not only as it relates to the military, but as it relates to the Biden administration hiding records as to the vaccine being put onto healthy children, and some of them having severe reactions or even dying from it. So that was being hidden from us. So no, we don't have any information yet. I do know that, I'm proud to see Secretary Hegseth putting those who were either kicked out of service or lost retirement eligibility or things like that, restoring the ability for these folks to either come back into the military or retire at the proper rank. So I think that we're starting to see the correcting of the record from the whole push on the vaccine front. But in terms of all the information they had at the time, as it relates to the DoD, yet we have not seen that, but that may be a good avenue for us to pursue.
Yeah, I was a squadron and a wing commander, and when I see doctors like Dr. Teresa Long, who's an Army flight surgeon, reporting facts and truth about the adverse reactions concerning heart conditions, strokes, those kind of things in military aviators, that's and then push outside of the military to communities like aviation and those kind of things. You probably remember the airline chiefs aggressively pushing it and making their crew members take these things. I just am really concerned because if they didn't care about aviation safety, I don't think they probably cared enough about the kids for it to really matter from that perspective. And one of the things that I get concerned about, and I want to see if there's any evidence of that in the documents after this next break, James, and that is that we've all heard the stories about the parents that have been told by these doctors, hey, you can either have a dead son or a live girl. And that's a daunting decision. That's a daunting piece of information that is not based on scientific evidence. It's based purely on an ideology. And that ideology is still living underneath the surface like worms and snakes, and octopus, anything that spreads under the surface. You can just use your imagination and think about it. That has really high concern from my perspective. And I would think that the leadership in the U.S. Armed Forces and in the U.S. government are very, very concerned about this because it's still out there.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, look, I think it's concerning when you have people that are pushing an agenda where you say, we must listen to our kids, who are 4, 5, 6 years old because they're saying that, they're interested in, the opposite sexes. They may have an interest in a girl's game, or if they're a boy or a girl, a boy's whatever it is, an interest. And the way that they would listen to them sort of blindly with something so major is what really concerns me. We don't listen to our kids if they tell us to do something, wild, and because they're little kids, right? That's our job, is to direct them and guide them and nurture them. But as it relates to this, for some reason, there is a sect of people out there that says, no, we must blindly listen to everything that they say. And if they say today they're a girl, they're a girl. It really doesn't it's never made any sense to me, just from a common sense perspective, right? Taking sort of my ideology and religion out of it. But so, yeah, I don't understand. I do know that, look, we have a president and a secretary of defense and a military leadership now that is concerned with readiness, that is concerned with lethality, that is recruiting at an all-time high. Because when all this stuff when people see potential soldiers and airmen, Marines, whatever it may be, see this going on, they get disinterested, right? The population of people that we need to recruit to fight and win the nation's wars is, young men and women, yes, but mostly young men who are, between the ages of 18 and 25, who, want to go and fight our nation's wars and protect our homeland, right? And secure our interests and secure our freedom. So when those types of folks see this going on, we saw it happen in the Biden administration. It plummeted. It absolutely plummeted, whether it was because this is what they saw or the purposeful acts of some of the Biden administration to make it plummet. But now we're seeing it increasing. We're seeing this turn back to, as I said, lethality and readiness and deployability, and that is what we should be focused on. The military should not be focused on, transgenderism or social projects. That is not what the military is designed for. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I get sort of animated about it. It's so refreshing to see a return to what we are supposed to be doing.
Exactly right. And eliminating DEI and the harmful ideologies. I want to talk to you a little bit after the break here about what does that mean from our perspective? What does it mean to get this harmful ideology out of our system, quite frankly? And we've got a question from the live audience that we'll take to in the next break. I'll be right back with James Fitzpatrick.
Introducing Worldview Tube Vault. Over 35 years of radio broadcasts, television programs, documentaries, and ebooks. Plus, Worldviewpedia, our powerful search engine for instant worldview and Bible research. Join for as little as $7.99 a month. And now, Vault members get something brand new, courses. Our very first course is here, the Book of Revelation with Brannon House. 53 in-depth lessons, complete with overview quizzes, walking you verse by verse through one of the most important books in Scripture. Getting started is simple. Go to worldviewtube.com/vault and join today. Already a member? Visit worldviewtube.com, click the person icon in the top right, and log in. Then hover over Vault in the menu and select Courses. That's it. You're in. Join WorldviewTube Vault today at worldviewtube.com/vault.
Mary, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. I want to backtrack to the hospitals that have stopped providing transgender surgeries and hormones for kids. On this front, does that have anything to do with the DOJ subpoenas last week? Should we expect any more hospitals be shutting down their programs? And I wanted to also ask what you make of all these media reports, especially the AP, which I noticed, which portrays these children as losing something that's saving their lives.
Yes, I think the president spoke a lot about this issue, which is a political issue, but also really a cultural issue that impacts children and families. He talked about it a lot on the campaign, and I think he was quite surprised by the uptick we were seeing in the embracement by the Democrat Party when it comes to the chemical castration and mutilation of young, innocent bodies. And so the president made it a very early priority to sign very strong executive orders to cut off the funding for any hospital or any medical facility in this country that provides such barbaric procedures. And as a result of that strong policy and the president's strong common sense position on this issue, we've had such an overwhelming response, which is great for children in Arizona. Phoenix Children's Hospital has stopped providing puberty blockers and hormone therapy to minors. In California, Stanford Medicine ended sex change surgeries for minors. Children's Hospital Los Angeles is closing its Center for Trans Youth Health and Development surgical program. In Illinois, Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago stopped sex change surgeries. Again, let's think about what we're talking about here. Sex change surgeries for minors. These are barbaric practices that no child, innocent child, should have to endure. And the president wants to protect the innocence of children. And I know the vast majority of Americans support him in that effort. This is a wildly popular and common sense endeavor this administration has taken. And we've seen many of these medical institutions have followed through with the president's executive orders, but will continue to take further action on this important issue. Garrett.
I too, if you'll indulge me.
Sure.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking about harmful ideologies. And I want to, focus on this segment with my guest James Fitzpatrick, who's the executive director of the Center to Advance Security in America, who broke this story about the Air Force doctor that was advising medical officers and civilians that they couldn't be sued for conducting surgery to transition minors that are dependents, I'm assuming, of U.S. military, armed forces, and civilians, especially stationed overseas. And James, I wanted to ask you about that. What do you think about readiness? Was there any discussion in the documents that you've seen so far about enabling our readiness by taking care of these children in the way that they wanted to do it by transiting them from either men to women or boys to girls or girls to boys? Any impact on readiness discussed at all?
It's a good point. There was no direct discussion of readiness, Colonel, but what I can tell you is there was some information that we saw that showed you sort of the evolution of this office, THEMU, the Transgender Health Evaluation Medical Unit that Smalley ran. It was actually created under Obama. In Trump 1, it existed, but it did not really have much going on. And then we saw an absolute explosion in 2021 in terms of the way that this care was implemented, not just to minors, but to everyone seeking gender-affirming care. So we know that, we can see that I don't have the exact number in front of me in terms of the percentage that explode, but the graph just shot up, right? So we see Biden administration increasing resources into this area. And then we also see readiness going down and recruiting going down, right? So we can sort of make an inference there that it does affect readiness because there's really no, again, as I talked about in the prior segment, common sense, right? It's prior to a transition, during a transition, and after a transition, a soldier is non-deployable. So that means that someone else has to come up and be recruited into that unit, or they have to find the resources elsewhere if that unit is deploying. Now, if that happens hundreds and hundreds of times, you're talking about a military that is just not ready and not as lethal as it can be. And in these sort of times when we have all sorts of strife, all over the world, as there always is, we need to be ready. And our military now is ready. We've shown that time and again under this president. Yeah. But that is because we've taken steps to ensure that it is. We saw with President Biden, various military disasters that I don't have to get into. But I think that this just added to it. It adds to confusion at the company level as to what to do with this soldier. Are they flagged? Are they not? Right. So you know this stuff. So it's again, we've turned away from that and we've restored it. But to your main question, there was no direct conversation of readiness, and that's what makes it actually more concerning.
Yeah, it does. I just can't imagine when these people are pushing this. It's an ideology, and we'll talk about that after we take this question from the live audience. Go ahead, Shell is our hostess over there. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Liz, sir.
Good afternoon, Colonel. Mr. Fitzpatrick. My question is, have you looked into the VA in all of this? Because of a lot of these people getting out and how much it's consuming their time. And also, were these children given mental health treatment, not just the physical stuff? And is that going to be ongoing for them? Thank you.
Sure. You want to address it first, Colonel, or you want me to take it?
No, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I'll take your second one first. We have not. That is a great point in terms of whether or not what are the ongoing kind of commitments under the insurance system that these children will have to undergo. We do not have that information, but that could be a fruitful area for additional records requests that we may very well look into. I appreciate the question. And as it relates to the VA, we do not have VA records on this issue, but again, I think a fruitful area to explore. We have gotten some VA records in the past under the Biden administration unrelated to trans issues, but related to their effort to sort of try to use VA resources to assist with the coordination and sort of the ability of the ICE and the Department of Homeland Security to take on the amount of immigrants that they were taking on, illegal immigrants, right? So they were stealing resources from the VA because they needed more resources at ICE and DHS in order to deal with the influx, which I think was outrageous. But no, not as it relates to this.
Yeah, the bureaucrats, I helped break that story on my show. The bureaucrats tried to downplay it by saying, well, it's just 10 contractors. Well, when you have veterans, I mean, actually veterans that have had limbs blown off, PTSD, TBI, all of this stuff going on, still getting denied treatment and denied claims, that's a problem. Even one is a problem. Hopefully, I hope you guys do take that one on because that's a good one. So in your work through CASA, do you come in contact with folks that have been harmed by these policies? Do you do any work with them in that regard?
Not necessarily. What we do is try to educate and inform the American public on what the government is, doing, what officials are doing, things that may impact their safety, security, civil rights, things like that. If there are people that come out of this that are individual plaintiffs or, individuals that may be harmed, they can seek sort of redress in their own way, bring on attorneys. I am an attorney, but, I've never represented someone in this capacity. But we do that in a variety of ways where, records requests, as I mentioned, litigation, all sorts of administrative complaints and letters and things like that. But if there is an individual that comes out of this that is affected, I think they have various options, but our organization wouldn't handle that.
Yeah. I just find it very, very interesting because in the next cold open clip, we'll see Chloe Cole, who is a detransitioner. Kind of why I asked the question. And then in the next segment, I want to go into some of the other work that you guys are doing. So I've seen some things on the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is near and dear to my heart because I live in Mississippi, and of the 7 extremist groups defined by or identified by SPLC in Mississippi, 5 of them are Moms for Liberty chapters. When I first reviewed their data. It's unbelievable.
That's crazy.
And it's ideological, right, James? That's one of the things I want to ask you before we go to this break is, I've seen Secretary Hegseth testify about removing harmful ideologies. I've seen memos that he's signed, orders that he's signed about removing harmful ideologies. And that this trans issue is an ideology. It's an ideological based set of health issues that are created out of thin air in most cases. I mean, I'm not denying gender dysphoria exists in a very, very minute part of any human population, but for the most part, this is ideological, right?
That's right. Yeah, and that's why they've spent so much time, energy, and resources, the Biden administration did, in sort of attempting to indoctrinate people in the ideology, right? If it was something like gender dysphoria, where everyone can acknowledge that, yes, that is a real issue that exists, that has to be dealt with, fine. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a orchestrated government campaign, whether it be within the DoD or more broadly speaking. I mean, we even had, it just sort of reminds me of our other work in some other agencies. They actually had a special envoy at the Department of State that they refer to as the LGBTQIA plus special envoy. I know that's a lot of letters, but that's how absurd it was. And part of that was sort of pushing transgender ideology throughout the world. So this person literally would travel the world and try to partner with other countries and try to sort of indoctrinate the parliaments of other countries and things like that in this ideology. So it wasn't just the DoD, right? It's everywhere under the Biden administration, and it was that's why we're a year and a half in, and to the Trump administration, and still we see examples of it because it's so hard to root it all out because it really infected everything they did. They were. I think I can confidently say they were obsessed with it.
Oh, absolutely, and there's still many of them are still there, and they're still obsessed with it to the point where they're hiding and waiting, trying to wait us out. We'll be right back with James Fitzpatrick, Army veteran and director of the Center to Advance Security in America. We'll be right back.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
Me now is detransitioner Chloe Cole. Chloe, thank you so much for being here this morning. I want to just start us off by playing, or showing you rather, what Marsha Blackburn, the senator, said in reaction to this case. She says, "This is exactly why I introduced the Chloe Cole Act, and the outcome in this case is a massive victory for children and parents. No child should be pushed into doing irreversible damage to their body under the guise of care." That act is named after you. What's your reaction to this legal victory, and what does it mean for what we might see next?
Frankly, I think that $2 million is not nearly enough to compensate for the damages that these doctors have done to my generation. I think that it would only be right if next every single doctor, every single clinic that's been involved in this has their wallets completely drained. They're all thrown in prison with the keys thrown out. But I think that $2 million, especially in a blue state like New York, this bodes well for the rest of the 28 cases, including my own, of all the children who have been harmed and are seeking legal justice.
Tuesday, we're talking about harmful ideologies wrapped around transgender ideology. The story broke just a few weeks ago about the discovery of documents with an Air Force doctor explaining to other doctors in the military and civilians that they can't be sued for performing transgender surgeries on minors. Keep in mind, military health care is primarily for adults. So, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about these documents that have been uncovered. And my guest today is James Fitzpatrick. He's the director of the Center to Advance Security in America, who got these documents through FOIA and a lawsuit, had to sue the Air Force to eventually get them. James, I can understand why they would want to hide these. When you listen to somebody like Ms. Cole, who has been there, done that, you really understand, don't you?
Yeah, and she seemed like an impressive young woman, and I'm happy for her. Hopefully, good luck with her and her case. But yeah, I do. You understand it. You understand the redactions. What is tougher to understand is why the Biden administration wanted to bring in a pediatrician to run this unit in the Air Force. Now, sorry, it's easy to understand, but it's more concerning, right? Mm-hmm. They have a guy who's there whose job is supposed to be discussing transgender health with members of active duty, whether you agree with that or not. He's there to perform that service. But then the fact that they bring in a trained pediatrician, I think to do that it shows you where their sort of real intentions were. So yes, I think it's understandable that they'd want to hide these records.
Yeah, and I mentioned the Southern Poverty Law Center before the break, the Moms for Liberty groups here in Mississippi that are tagged. One of the issues that Moms for Liberty fights against is boys and girls' bathrooms and locker rooms because of this transgender ideology. Have you guys done any work in that area and taken a hard look at the SPLC and their questionable data?
We have. I appreciate you bringing that up. We've been on them sort of for a while. Back in last October, we actually filed a complaint with the IRS requesting a investigation into their 501c3 status because they have all sorts of questionable lobbying activity, partisan political activity. Just the fact that they have a hate map where all they mention are members of the Republican Party or conservative movement who the vast majority of are totally mainstream, just conservatives that are engaging in protected speech, and they're calling that hate speech, which they don't really define. So yeah, we filed a complaint, and then in the meantime, there is this indictment, which is just really outrageous in and of itself, right? You have an organization, the SPLC, who claims to fight racism that is actually paying people to directly engage in racism, right? They've given, over a 12-year period, they gave $270,000 to people who were part of this Unite the Right the AstroTurf event that went on. You have these neo-Nazi groups that took money from them, KKK, all sorts of disgusting organizations that they are propping up. They are giving money to and paying, and while telling their donors, give us money to fight racism, and then they turn around and actually give it to real racists. It's really it's concerning, and what they're doing is they're manufacturing racism to justify their own existence. That's really what they're doing.
Yeah, it is, and I look forward to seeing the results of this indictment, the entire legal process. Hopefully, we can find a side of the legal process and machinery in this country that can still be objective. Unfortunately,
that's right.
We have some challenges in that arena too.
That's right. But all this points to they should not be a 501c3 organization. Now we're talking about illegal activity. So we have all sorts of things, violations, where you should, an organization should never be engaging in. Illegal activity is first and foremost, but partisan, political, inappropriate lobbying. I mean, really, you go down the list, and their status should be taken away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got another question in the live audience. Let's go ahead and take that before we get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Shel.
We have Grandma Kate, sir. Thank you, Shel. Good afternoon, Colonel, and good afternoon, Mr. Fitzpatrick. My question is this: why is there a push for transgenderism in the military? And do you feel that a chemical and surgically altered service member would compromise their duties? Thank you.
I think we're kind of looking in the rearview mirror now, James. But I don't think they're all out of the military yet. The secretary gave quite a long period of time to work through the processes, so nobody got unduly harmed on benefits and those kind of things. But it is an interesting question. I'm wondering if you guys have seen anything in your documents that you've gotten that might give some insight into that. Why on earth would we want people that are, in my mind, as a commander, not worldwide deployable in the U.S. military?
Well, yeah, we don't. And thanks for the question. We do not want folks that are in a non-deployable status, right? It's as simple as that. It has nothing. It has nothing to do with, there's some out there in the progressive movement that think this is somehow picking on these folks. It is not. No one is saying that they can't do what they want in their own personal life, right? This is talking about their ability to help the United States military fight and win the nation's wars. And the military does not have time to be engaging in these discussions and debates about whether they should or should not provide a surgery, or whether, this person is or is not deployable. As I said earlier, you have the pre-transition phase, the transition phase, and the post-transition phase. It takes months and months for this person to get to be deployable. So, yes, it affects the readiness. The reason, I think the first part of the question was, why were they doing it? I don't know why the Biden administration wanted to push this so heavily in general, but then really so heavily within the military. I think it is sort of rooted in their desire to move the country adrift from its traditional values. Things that have made us great, which is, things like a powerful military, things like traditional family values, and they are diametrically opposed to that. So, and personnel is policy with them. And I think you had, various actors throughout the administration that were of the, sort of extremist ilk on these issues. So I don't know why, other than those are the people that they hire and those are the goals that they have. But this administration is diametrically opposed, has gone the total other opposite direction, which I think is the right direction of readiness, lethality, and bringing us back to the purpose why the military exists, to fight and win the nation's war. So, happy to see it.
Yeah, I have too. Just a merit-based hiring process for civilians.
That's right.
Based on what you can do, based on your qualifications, depending on what field you're going. I mean, just a simple thing like that we're used to. We've gone back to that now.
That's right.
There have been some judges trying to stop some things and those kind of things. You mentioned one of the issues y'all look at is impact on rights, on rights. And we talked about CQ Brown and his quotas, even though he wouldn't call them quotas. But I read his memo that he and the current Secretary of the Air Force at the time, when he was Chief of Staff of the Air Force, signed. And there were pretty detailed numbers about white male pilots versus everybody else. And then those were broken down. And it all had percentages assigned that what they were and what they should be. That sounds like a goal to me, which is against the federal law, for one.
Of course.
Because of the things like the Civil Rights Act, So what is CASA doing? We got a couple of minutes left here. I want to give you a chance to talk about the organization, but from a either getting back or protecting people's civil rights perspective, what are you all doing from that perspective, and any future projects you got rolling out or anything?
Yeah, no, I think it's just, again, we want to educate and inform the American public. And I think the example that you brought up is a great example of things that are going on in the military that the average American did not know until we exposed it, which was, literal racial quotas within the United States Air Force. It was, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And actually, quickly on that, we filed they actually really tried to hide documents there. We filed a FOIA a few years ago. We referenced an article where the general, CQ Brown, said that he emailed the document. We FOIA'd and specifically asked for that document. They came back with a no records hit, and so we had to sue them. And then when we sue them, they provide thousands of records. So again, they try to hide these things because they know that they're controversial. But in that situation, we found that they had an entire PowerPoint presentation dedicated to how they wanted to decrease the amount of whites that join the Air Force ROTC and specifically increase the amount of every other race. Why that is, I don't know, other than, like you said, we need to be merit-based in the military. I don't know why they wanted to meet these specific racial quotas. I mean, as a veteran, I can tell you, and the military is one of the most diverse places you'll go and meet people from all sorts of backgrounds that are supremely qualified in what they do. And, it's refreshing to see all sorts of races and backgrounds there. But putting that sort of, ideology in the middle of it, it really would just cause strife. So, yeah, it is. That's just another example of what we've done on that area to protect people's civil rights and really just to educate the public on how their rights are being affected.
Absolutely. Well, where can folks find the organization and you? Give them the coordinates real quick.
Sure. Yeah, I think the best place to find us where we put out a lot of our breaking stuff is on X is @SecureUSA. And then our website is advancing-america.org.
Advancing-america.org.
That's right.
Thanks a lot, James Fitzpatrick. We appreciate the work you're doing. Keep busting it out, sir.
Thanks for having me, Colonel. Appreciate it.
You bet. Tomorrow's Whistleblower Wednesday. Hey, we're going to be talking to Chris Hamilton about what's going on in the healthcare world and all of the secrets that cause your healthcare to be exploding in price. I'll see you then on the Rob Maness Show.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcast.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean. It tastes fine. But what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial-scale systems to whole house filtration to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. And here's the best part. It installs in just 15 minutes. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required. Perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water, including you, including your family. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net. And discover what truly clean water can do for your health.
Friends, this is Brandon Howes. For more than a year now, I've been teaching through the book of Revelation, and the response from you has been overwhelming. You've asked me again and again, when are you going to put this study in print? We want to mark it up. We want to share it with our families. Well, it's here. My brand new 2-volume commentary on the book of Revelation, verse by verse, chapter by chapter. This is not a watered-down, allegorized replacement theology approach to Revelation. This is a literal, grammatical, historical study, the way the Lord intended his word to be read. And I connect the prophecy of Revelation to the headlines you're watching unfold right now, the rise of global government and the convergence of end-time events the Lord Jesus warned us about. Folks, we are living in serious days, and there has never been a more important time to understand what God has told us about what is coming. Get your 2-volume Revelation commentary today at worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com.